It's a real pleasure to be here. It's Committee Room 14. This is where a lot of stuff happens. This is where the Parliamentary Labour Party meets on a Monday night, and where the 1922 the Tory Backbench Committee meets as well in this room. So you're sitting on seats which have been previously been occupied by some real horses. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Mearns, and I've got the privilege and pleasure of chairing this old party group, having established it with Jason and the union. Was it last year, Jason? Or the year before? It's not last year. So it doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself. So we've got a fairly packed agenda. We've got the room literally for a time limited for an hour. There is a whole range of technical stuff going on in this place. You know, we normally meet in room 20, but I've just been saying to Jason that at the moment the house authorities are literally bumping people out of rooms at very short notice because of this stuff which is happening, Brexit, etc. The government need to get through 600 delegated legislation committee resolutions, and so each one of them takes a committee of the House, so that just occupying committee rooms at very short notice. I did one yesterday, a delegated legislation committee at 4:30, lasted about 45 minutes, but it just bumps everybody else out while this stuff's going on. So, you know, you've come on a nice quiet day, nothing happening, it's nothing to see here. There might be a vote on Brexit later on, or 5 or 6 or 7, who knows, but this is the, as the mafia would say, this is the profession that we've chosen, so we'll keep on with it, right? So I'll hand you straight over for an introduction from Jane Wright, who's the chair of the Scotland Foster Care Workers Branch. And if anybody's got any questions, we'll have a sort of a wash-up session at the end, so everybody will get a chance to ask questions or make points at the end. But if there's anything really pressing or really urgent where you want to ask a question just to clarify, please stick your hand up. So Jane, what do you?
It's okay if I sit down?
Can you
hear me? Yeah. So you probably have noticed there's a bit of a buzz about the place today. There's quite a few film crews, cameramen, journalists, but I think most of them are missing the big news, because the big news today for 55,000 foster carers in the UK is happening in this room. And it's not just about us as the foster carers, it's big news for the 65,000 odd foster children across the UK, because if we've got rights and stability and we're well supported, that will only be beneficial for our children. So this bill is going to be life-changing for us. And up till now, many of you will have been at quite a few of these APPGs, and up till now, we've talked about the problems. We've heard some really sad and difficult evidence from people talking about when things haven't gone well, when the system's let them down, when the system's let their children down. But today, we're here to talk about the solutions, and we're here to talk about the solution that the IWGB and Jason and John have put together. So this is a huge day for us all. So why is it so important? First of all, it's important for children. Stability is a big thing that's lacking in most of the children we look after's life. They've all had moves, some of them have had dozens of moves, and it's not right. My understanding from spending a good number of years looking at fostering and being a foster carer is that the moves often come as the result of carers not being supported, not having things put in place to help them, and not having a belief that they can do what they've been tasked with doing. Happier and less stressed foster carers are undoubtedly going to lead to happier and less stressed kids, and that's got to be a win for everybody. At the moment, many of us are fearful of speaking up for our children. We're fearful to say to the local authority or say to our agency, I don't think that's the right decision for them. I see how upset they get by such and such, and we're worried about speaking up. But we know these children really well, and we love these children, and I think if we feel able to stand up and speak for them, then that's got to be positive for them. So foster carers, why is it good for us? The big one, I think, from people I've spoken to and from our members in Scotland, and I'm sure it's the same across the country, is that people don't have whistleblowing rights. People see things going wrong, they speak to people, they see decisions being made that aren't child-centred, they see things where children's rights aren't being put first, and they can't speak out about them. if we had whistleblowing rights, we are very well placed to see when things need to change. We want the right to be treated like any other worker. We go to meetings and we sit round a table and we're the only one there that doesn't have rights, and we're often the last one to get asked. You know, the last education, the last health, the last social work, and we've informed all those reports, and when it comes to us, everybody said our bit and we're last in the pile. I think rights would help that and definitely make us be seen as equal professionals with others. Rights to a pension, that would be huge. I heard a really sad story recently. A woman retired after 35 years of caring in a Scottish local authority. Her last day she went to our support group and was given a £20 voucher from Marks and Spencer's and a bunch of flowers. She's now living on £77 a week after 35 years of looking after the country's children. At the moment we don't have rights to, against unlawful discrimination. We can be deregistered for becoming ill, for getting pregnant, for looking at someone the wrong way, for speaking out the wrong way. That's going to be a big game changer for us. The right to fair pay. I don't know about you guys, but I struggle to manage on the money that I get paid to do this. And I don't think I should be struggling, and my birth child should be struggling, and certainly I don't think my wee boy that I foster should be struggling. The right to time to rest. I mean, that's a controversial one. You know, that can be difficult for people to hear. But if you've got a burnt out, stressed out foster carer, they're not going to be giving the best for that children. We can and will find solutions of being able to look after, manage rest time for everybody in a child-centred, friendly way. We had a difficult situation. We were sitting in a meeting, Lydia and I, a couple of weeks ago, and a young man was telling us about how painful it was when his foster carers went away on holiday and didn't take him with them. But there's ways around that. That doesn't need to be the case. We can look at things like Mockingbird. We can have specific respite carers for children. Let's not be afraid of talking about the fact that, like everybody else, we need a rest from time to time. And what about society? I think for society, people don't know what fostering's like. Unless they're part of it, they don't understand. But I think most people would be shocked to know there wasn't any sort of central licensing body, that we aren't all assessed to the same standard, that we aren't all trained to the same way. At the moment, it's very ad hoc. Certainly in Scotland, there's 32 local authorities, 19 independent providers, all doing their own thing. We're a country of 5 million people with 4,000 foster carers. That's a huge number of different organisations, all having a hand in a very small pool. We believe it should be centralised. And also the reassurance that when something has gone wrong and somebody has been struck off the register, that is a recognised thing. They can't just go to another area. We're not about condoning bad practice by foster carers. That doesn't do our profession any good whatsoever. We need to be able to speak out about bad practice, and we need to know that when people have been struck off, they say struck off. So, in summary, I think this is a big win for everybody. I'm so excited. I'm actually quite emotional about being here today talking about this, but not just for myself, but for my wee boy, and also for every one of you guys sitting here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. And we'll move swiftly on. And our next speaker is Vicki Swain, who's from the Fostering Network. And she's going to speak to us in support of a central register for foster care workers. Over to you, please, Vicki.
So if it's okay, I'll stand. So hi, thanks very much to the IWGB for inviting me here. So basically, in a nutshell, the Fostering Network's position is that there should be a central register in England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. For the purposes of this meeting, I plan to talk about England. So I'm going to talk to you about the issues in the foster care sector that we believe can be addressed by the National Register. I'm also going to touch on the potential models of regulation and registration. So one of the key issues is the portability for foster carers. So for the non-foster carers in this room, a quick overview of the assessment and approval. So in order to work as foster carer as an individual or part of the household who share the care of the child, you need to be registered with a registered fostering service. The details, timing and length varies depending to each fostering service, but broadly applicants, you do an application process, you're assessed by the foster carer, medical checks, DBS, training and references. The report then goes to the fostering panel, which considers the applicant's suitability to foster, they make a recommendation to the fostering service, and then it goes to the fostering service's decision maker. The assessment and approval process should be completed within 8 months according to the national minimum standards, but in reality, and I'm sure lots of you have experienced it, it goes way beyond 8 months. While foster carers are self-employed for taxation purposes, as you know, you can only foster for one fostering service. So moving to another fostering service usually requires foster carers to fully repeat the approval and assessment process again, which severely reduces your portability. Transport protocols, which are currently non-enforceable, are in place, but foster carers tell us that they have difficulties moving in between fostering services, especially if you have a child in placement. We've got our State of Nation coming out on Sunday. We did a survey of over 4,000 foster carers, and we asked them about their experiences moving between fostering services. So 7%, only 7% of foster carers told us that they'd moved a fostering service. Of those foster carers who moved or in the process of moving, 93% had to redo the complete assessment and approval process. Over 1 in 10 foster carers wanted to move, but for a variety of reasons didn't want to disrupt the placement and the bureaucratic nightmare that means potentially going without a child for a long period of time, and of course your income has prevented them from doing so. So just a quote, if I may, from a couple of foster carers. We had to redo everything. References from family and friends, they looked at our bank accounts, they asked intimate questions about our marriage and family relationships. We went through the whole invasive process again from scratch. Someone else said, I'm doing the assessment, but it's taken 8 months just to get references. Also, delays caused by spurious concerns raised by present agency and threats of deregistration, or the new agency often halt or delay the process. And simply, a foster carer said, it was a complete waste of time and money, we still had the same child. So a national register would greatly enhance portability of foster carers by providing a national licensing approach. When a foster carer decides to move to another fostering service, the new fostering service will be able to carry out a simple check with a national register to confirm their approval status, and then would only need to carry out the local checks and interviews. The system would be less bureaucratic, reducing duplication and delays. It would also place appropriate decisions with the fostering service. Rather than deciding if the foster carer is about their suitability to become a foster carer, rather than actually if it meets the needs of its service. So for example, when a social worker goes to work for another fostering service, they're not asked to redo all their qualifications. They're simply interviewed to make sure that they meet the needs of the fostering service. Second key reason is safeguarding. So a register would also ensure that foster carers could be prevented from carrying out the role of foster carer if there are issues which question their suitability. It would also prevent carers who have had their approval removed from moving around from one area to the other. Currently, if a concern is raised about an approved foster carer's suitability to foster, an investigation is carried out by the fostering service and a review is undertaken, which may be referred to the fostering panel for consideration. If a decision maker makes a qualifying determination to terminate the approval, the foster carer can opt to make a referral to the IRM, the independent review mechanism, for review or make written representation to the fostering panel. The IRM has a panel to review the decision and comes up with a recommendation with reasons to the decision maker. However, the final decision about a foster carer's suitability to foster is made by the fostering service's decision maker. They can and do ignore the recommendations of the IRM, and the fostering service is able to end a foster carer's career against the wishes of the IRM. In 2016 to 17, the IRM had 85 fostering cases. In 30 of these cases, the IRM recommended that the foster carer should continue being able to foster, and in 14 out of the 30 cases, the local authority went against the decision of the IRM. We believe that the fostering service should be responsible for making local decisions, but it should not be making decisions about foster carer's suitability to foster. They should make a referral on suitability to a central body like the IRM. If there was a central register of approved foster carers, then individuals could be removed following unsuitability decisions. In the absence of either a national list of approved foster carers or those found to be unsuitable, there is no centrally held information on these individuals who are suitable or unsuitable to foster, which prevents a safeguarding concern. So, the benefits of a central register model. So one, as I talked about, improving the safeguarding of children and young people, as the current system relies on the honesty of applicants and carers moving from service to declare all information about previous employment and relationships. Under the existing rules, there is no way of knowing that an applicant has previously fostered somewhere else if the carer chooses to withhold that information. Increasing the portability of the workforce, enabling them to transfer providers more easily rather than requiring foster carers to go through training and assessment again. So we believe this would force fostering services to up their game in terms of support, training, status, finances and so on. Otherwise they would risk losing their foster carers to a better fostering service that offered a better package. It would support the creation of a standardised and accredited pre- and post-approval training package framework linked to the register. It would improve the formal status of foster carers to allow the role to be more recognised and valued both within the sector and the general public. And it would bring foster carers into line with the rest of the children's social care workforce. And then together we really believe that that would help in driving up standards in foster care. So in a nutshell, that's our argument in relation to why we need a register. Thank you.
Right, as always, the parliamentary presence at the APPG is a movable feast, but since we've been joined by Northern Lamb and Emma Hardy and Matt Weston, so you're very welcome. Thank you very much for coming along. Over to you, Jason, please.
Around 2.5 years ago, a foster care worker from the Midlands got in touch with the IWGB to have a conversation about unionisation. She, like many in the profession, had had her already low wages cut against her will, did not have any employment rights, and was mistreated by the local authority for whom she worked. When I went to meet her, the IWGB had only been around for a few years, had a membership of less than 1,000, and was unionising mainly cleaners and couriers. I didn't know a thing about foster care. The union agreed that if we could get a decent showing for an inaugural meeting, that we would launch a new branch for foster care workers. We did get that decent showing and launched the branch in September 2016. Since that time, membership among foster care workers has exploded, with on average more than 2 per day joining since we started representing them. And they now constitute nearly half of the IWGB's membership. In the past couple of years, the union has held loads of meetings across the country, hearing the stories of abuse and mistreatment suffered by foster care workers. We've heard of the hardship caused by already miserly salaries being cut even further, of how the lack of whistleblowing protection leaves foster care workers in perpetual fear of speaking out, how the lack of paid holidays has good carers burning out, how the opinion of everyone in the team surrounding the child is valued except that of the foster care worker, and of how a corrupt and unaccountable regime of kangaroo courts deregistering foster care workers has turned lives upside down. When the workers in the sector are not unionized, not covered by employment legislation, and not regulated by an independent body, these outcomes are hardly surprising. The main objectives of the foster care workers branches of the IWGB have always included obtaining a central register managed by an independent regulator, workers' rights, and a voice. And today we're taking a massive step towards achieving these objectives. This APPG has already heard at length about the problems arising from a lack of protection, the lack of an independent regulator, and the lack of a voice for foster care workers. Having identified the problem, we now need this APPG to start focusing on the solution. The IWGB is therefore presenting the proposal for a regulatory body, workers' rights, and a collective voice. The draft of this proposal was put out to consultation, and our members responded in force. Many of the suggestions arising out of the over 1,500 answers to 7 questions by nearly 300 people have been incorporated into the proposal. Not only have we outlined our proposal, I think we're going to hand out copies now, But John Hendy QC, who we'll hear from shortly, has, with the help of Camille Ibbotson, written an extensive and detailed note for civil servants, instructing them on how this proposal should be translated into legislation. The IWGB proposal calls for a regulatory body, the Foster Care Workers Council, which will be governed by representatives of foster care workers, employers, and independent stakeholders. The council will be responsible for accrediting training, registration, and deregistration of foster care workers. These functions will be taken out of the hands of local authorities and IFAs. Therefore, once a foster care worker has completed the accredited training, they can apply to the council to be added to the register of foster care workers. If they meet the standards set by the regulatory body, they will be added to the register and can then apply to foster for one or more local authorities without having to go through each local authority's training and registration process. There will be a grandfathering clause in our proposal so that all foster care workers already registered with a local authority or IFA at the time the legislation comes into force will be automatically added to the register. When allegations arise against a foster care worker, these will be sent to the regulatory body, who will decide whether there is enough evidence supporting the allegations for them to be taken forward. Falsifying evidence will be a criminal offense. Only those cases which meet a certain evidentiary threshold will be taken forward by way of referral to a foster care workers tribunal. This will be an operationally independent tribunal chaired by a legally qualified person who will decide whether or not to deregister the foster care worker. Foster care workers can appeal against the tribunal's rulings, and appeals would go to the Employment Appeal Tribunal. This system would constitute the end of the local authority kangaroo court. The IWGB proposal would extend the workers' rights associated with Limb B workers, the intermediate category between employees and people in business on their own account, to foster care workers. Importantly, this would mean trade union rights, paid holidays, protection for whistleblowing and against discrimination, amongst others. The proposal also calls for a retainer to be paid between placements, suspensions during allegation procedures to be paid, and would make it unlawful for a local authority or IFA to dismiss a foster care worker on the basis that they are unfit to practice, unless this is based on a finding of the Foster Care Workers Tribunal. As Limb B workers are taxed as self-employed, these proposals would not alter the tax regimes applicable to foster care workers. Finally, the IWGB proposal would establish a system of sectoral collective bargaining, where representatives of employers and representatives of unions representing foster care workers would meet regularly to discuss and agree on how the industry is run. This would include things like pay, terms and conditions, best practice, etc. Independent members would be part of the negotiations in order to break a tie, and local authorities and IFAs could only provide inferior pay or terms and conditions in extremely narrow circumstances. This proposal, along with John Hendy QC's note on the Foster Care Workers Bill, is the closest foster care workers have come to date to fixing what we all know is a badly broken system. We now need to get on to figuring out how to implement it.
Thank you, Jason. We've also been joined by Lord Listowel, welcome, and by Jim Shannon MP from Northern Ireland, so you're very, very welcome. We now move on to a presentation by John Hendy QC, and it's a real delight to have John here this afternoon. He's going to present us with the Foster Care Workers Bill, and John's been working on this for quite some time, and he's been being ably aided by a trainee barrister, is it? Camille Ibbotson. So Camille, we thank you for the work that you've done along with John on this. John is a leading employment law barrister. He specialises in trade union law at Old Square Chambers. He's the chair of the Institute of Employment Rights, the vice chairman of the International Centre for Trade Union Rights, and joint secretary of the United Campaign for the repeal of anti-trade union laws. He's an honorary professor at University College London, and so much more. We've known John for an awful long time, probably too long, John, I would guess, from that perspective. But he's a great friend and a great ally of workers who are struggling for their rights. So, John, over to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much. I think you and I have known each other for a lot more than 30 years now.
I'm afraid so.
And I've been in practice for, in May of this year, I've been in practice for 42 years. And I've spent all those years representing employees, workers and trade unions. And I think I've represented almost every conceivable category of worker that you can imagine. Hospital consultants, dockers, miners, seafarers, prison officers, police officers, every conceivable kind of worker. And when I came first to be introduced to foster carers as workers, my cousin actually is a foster carer, but I never spoke to her about the conditions of work for foster carers. But when through Jason I came to look at the issue of foster carers, there were 4 particular features of what you guys do that struck me as a labour lawyer. The first thing is that you're not an employee, you're not a worker, you're not self-employed, you're not nothing at all. You must be the only workers in the country that have got no official status at all. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you have no regulatory body setting standards for the profession. There is no register, as Vicki has explained, no register of foster carers. I found that particularly striking. Thirdly, there is no independent tribunal to assess whether a foster carer alleged to have committed professional misconduct in some way has committed it or not. It's simply left to the local authority or the foster care provider. And finally, and the fourth thing, is that as far as I can see, there is no way in which foster carers have any voice in the terms and conditions on which they are engaged. So when Jason asked me whether it would be possible to draft a bill for foster care workers, it was those 4 omissions that guided me in what I thought we had to do. It seemed to me that you were properly described as a profession, like social workers or medical people or architects or even barristers. And for that reason, it's been possible to look at the legislation and the rules and regulations which govern other professions to see what bits we could nick and put into the foster care workers bill. And that's what I've done. Camille and I have heavily borrowed from the legislation that deals with doctors and social workers and so forth, but we've done it with certain important distinctions. So what I like to do now, I don't know whether everybody's got a copy of this note on foster care workers bill, but I'll just raise a few points that arise from it. First thing is that this is not a bill in itself, and the reason for that is, well, there's 2 reasons really. One is that it will be a terrible long job to draft an Act of Parliament for foster care workers, and there are people in this building called Parliamentary draftspeople who spend their lives drafting Acts of Parliament on the instructions of their relevant ministers, and I honestly haven't got the resources to do that myself, nor has Camille. That's one reason. The other reason is that it would be an extremely long bill. If you look, I brought the Medical Act here. This is the Act which regulates doctors. It's 124 pages, and that's just a bit too much for me at the moment. I've got other things on my plate. So what I've done is prepared a note, which I thought, as Jason has mentioned, might provide the basis of instructions to the Parliamentary draft people to draft the bill if it was commissioned. So let me set out then the essential elements of it. First of all, what we envisage is an act not as long as the Medical Act, a short act, but it will be, the detail will be in statutory instruments, what the lawyers call secondary legislation, orders, regulations and so on. They will have the force of law, but they won't be in the primary act. The primary act will set out principles, and then the secondary legislation provides the detail. That's standard in many professions. We've set out in paragraph 3 all of the various regulations for different professions that we have a look at. So the first part of the proposal is part 1, the regulatory body. And what we're proposing here is a foster care workers council. And this is going to be the governing body of the profession. And it will represent, of course, the agencies which place children in care, primarily local authorities, but I understand there are others, and trade unions which represent foster care workers. Personally, I think that's crucial. It's crucial that on this council there should be an equal number of representatives of the actual foster workers that carry out the work of fostering in this country. We've also made provision on that council for representatives of universities and colleges which train foster care workers. There's an awful lot of academics who are sympathetic to, interested in, and have dedicated their lives to research into fostering. It would be useful to have their voice at the council table. And we've included also the charities, various charities, which are concerned with the fostering sector. We've also made provision for representation from adults who actually spent part or all their childhood in foster care. Why shouldn't they have a voice too, to be heard there? And finally, the Secretary of State is the Secretary of State for Education, who is responsible for foster care in this country. She or he should have a representative as well. That way we think it would be possible to construct a balanced council to regulate the profession. And we've also made provision for the council to have various committees: training and registration committee, an investigation committee, a fitness to practice committee, and a tribunal advisory committee. Now those last 3 committees are all to do with dealing with what happens when an allegation is made that a foster carer is not fit to carry out their professional duties. And we've also made provision for a foster care workers tribunal, which will be an independent tribunal composed of at least 3 members, one of whom will be the chair, who will be legally qualified, either a barrister or a solicitor with at least 7 years post-qualification training. So that we've got an independent decision maker when allegations are made. And when allegations are made against foster carers, of course they are, not only are the consequences very severe, but the actual fact that the allegation is severe and damaging to the social worker. And if they're true, of course, then it means that there is a danger to those placed in the care of those workers. So nothing could be more serious than to ensure fairness and justice in the conduct of the tribunal. Oh, thank you, Ian. So under the council, we've also got the system of registration, which Vicki has described, a central national register of those who are qualified to conduct the profession of foster carer. Nobody will be allowed to be a foster carer unless they're on the register. And we've set out what the conditions are for registration. Council will have to specify what qualifications, what training are required, and so forth, and so on, and how you get registered. And then there's, of course, the procedure for removal from the register and so on, which will usually be, which will, unless one retires, will be by finding of the tribunal with an appeal to the Employment Appeal Tribunal. Then we've got a section on training, because we think that the council should have the power to designate what training is going to be required of foster carers, and to designate appropriate courses which universities and colleges will have to get registration in order to conduct. And then we've got fitness to practice, and I'll just make a couple of points about that. Fitness to practice is a term which is used in almost every other profession. This is not something that Camille and I have dreamed up for foster carers. General Medical Council has a fitness to practice committee which assesses the fitness to practice of doctors. We've simply borrowed that, and it's true of social workers and almost every other profession, including barristers as well. And fitness to practice can be put into question by reason of these kinds of allegations: misconduct, incompetence, incapability, conviction or a caution for a criminal offence, a conviction which, if it wasn't committed in the United Kingdom, would constitute a criminal offence in the UK, adverse physical or mental health, determination by a regulatory body to the effect that the person's fitness to practice is impaired, including problems under the Disclosure and Barring Service, the DBS, and finally not having necessary knowledge of a language reasonably specified as a condition of the engagement of the foster carers. And the point about that is that it covers almost every allegation that you can conceive of, which goes to whether a foster carer is fit to practice or not, and it takes it away from any employer or engager of foster carers. They will not be empowered to investigate those matters. So it's an independent investigation. And we've provided for all the things that lawyers provide for in hearings: standard of proof, application of the rules of natural justice and so forth and so on, time periods for each step to occur in, screening of allegations to see whether they fit misconduct allegations or not, so forth and so on. I won't go into the detail, but happy to deal with questions if there are any. In part two, we deal with employment rights and make sure that foster carers are effectively workers with the rights that workers have. And Jason has dealt with that. All the rights that one would expect a worker to have: minimum holiday, national minimum wage, so forth and so on, non-discrimination, etc. And the final part is part three, which is sectoral collective bargaining. And what we've done here is to set up a mechanism for collective bargaining between the employers or engagers of foster carers on the one side of the bargaining council, and the unions which represent foster carers on the other side of the bargaining council. And that council is to set minimum terms and conditions for all foster carers carrying out foster care work. Of course, an employer can employ or engage on better terms and conditions, but they can't employ on worse terms and conditions. And we think this is important. Nothing novel about this. This is something which reflects what has happened in local authorities since J.H. Whitley introduced the Whitley Councils in 1918. It's a similar mechanism that we're proposing here that applied in other private areas of industry from the time of the trades boards in 1909 through the wages councils until their final abolition in 2013. Nothing novel at all, but we do think, right, that it's crucial that there should be a way in which foster carers can exercise a collective voice over the minimum terms and conditions on which they're engaged. We're not just talking about wages, remuneration, put it that way. We're talking about every conceivable aspect of the engagement of foster care. I know you don't have fixed hours, of course you don't. That's not the way foster care works. But there must be room for a discussion about how holidays are to be taken and all sorts of other things. And we've set that out in a great long list of subjects which we think should be considered by the bargaining council after it's established. So that's the general structure that we're proposing to you. I know that Jason said that there was a lot of consultation before this was drafted, and so there was, and a lot of the thoughts, or practically all the thoughts, of the membership and those who were consulted, I think find form in these notes. But I should say, Jason, I think there's room for further negotiation on these notes, because Claire and I have used our imagination a little bit to expand things, and they do need discussion. How many members are there to be on the council? How many trade union representatives? How many representatives from the employers? How many other charities to have? All these things need a lot more discussion to be fleshed out. So I put it before you anyway as a useful step on the path to regulating the profession of foster care workers. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, John. As I said, we're going to have a wash-up with opportunities for questions and answers. But are there any particular questions in technical detail that anyone wants to ask John at the moment? And then John can pass over to Kibble to answer. Is that right? Yes.
One of the problems I think that new foster carers have is the lack of support around social services and out of hours. Does the bill deal with that, the support for a foster carer outside of regular hours?
It doesn't. It could do, or it could be left to the bargaining council to deal with as a matter of negotiation. I think that's probably a matter for you guys to sort out afterwards. If you ask me to, of course, we can find some formula of work to stick in a bill to that effect.
Could I ask, in the structure there, in Linby, the worker thing, what happens if some organisations want to keep you as an employee? It's the same structure then. Would that be allowed? Or if some people want to be an employee, you stay there, a Linby worker?
Yeah, the way it's drafted at the moment is you're simply a worker, and that straddles both camps, an employee and an MB worker. You will be a worker employed by whoever it is that pays your remuneration.
Okay.
Yes, I was the person first put forward the idea of central registration with the fostering network, which is old history, but I also was a social worker as well as a foster care, and I was a social worker from the beginning of the 1989 Children's Act, which was one of the most revolutionary, insightful pieces of legislation on child welfare ever drafted. Yet I have seen that being bypassed and undermined throughout its existence because it all was in one huge document. Now, I think a safer way forward, although I think there's some very good work here, is to take a look at specific things that undermine the safety of foster carers and their progression as carers, and do one thing at a time and make sure it's done right, than try to change the whole system at once. Because that's what happened with the Children's Act of 1989. There were ways that local authorities and social workers and and other professionals got around the regulation that was supposed to keep families in the decision-making process, and are completely excluded from it now, pretty much. And I think the same thing could happen with foster carers. To me, the most important thing is the flow of information. There's an awful lot of information flowing about foster carers that they have no knowledge of or control over. And I think the Data Protection Act in application can do that.
I'm grateful for the point, but I was looking for specific questions at the moment. There's an opportunity.
Yeah, well, it's just the idea of an overall bill as opposed to maybe having a timeline and list of preferences of what's done at a time instead of one big act. Smaller.
Anyone with just
No,
questions?
just out of respect, no disrespect, but this whole thing needs looking at. It's not pigeon steps. This change needs now.
Oh, it don't need to, but how to get there.
One of the things I've noticed a lot more of now is that instead of having just one foster carer, there is also couples that do foster caring. And sometimes the trust or the council will say there's a nominated carer, when actually me and my wife, we jointly care for disabled children. There needs two of us. And I hope that the relevant trusts and councils won't just be prepared to pay just one person, but if the person, like we have, we both give up our jobs to care for a disabled child with high needs, that they're both included as
at the moment, you're both included on that envelope.
No,
It's based on age.
No, we're not.
No, well, on mine, Sarah, it's explained both on age, so
Right, okay.
naturally you pay them.
Right. And that was something I hope will be included.
Sons and daughters as well.
I'll bring. Do you want to add anything you want to answer?
Yeah, just very briefly, on the point about the Children's Act and so on, I take your point, of course, that there's force in what you say, but I think there's also two particular aspects of what we're proposing here that I think should give reassurance. One is that we're putting the regulation of this profession in the hands of a council on which there will be representation of foster care workers themselves, so that the council, in doing what it's doing, can't just bypass aspects of it, and will have to hold local authorities to account. And the second thing is that we've got the second council, the bargaining council, which is where I imagine that disputes are going to arise, where the unions are going to say, hang on a minute, this local authority is not telling the lie, we want this sorted out. And ultimately, that will be a dispute that if it can't be agreed, will be arbitrated. So I think that you can rest assured that there will be protection. And finally about that, as I say, the construction here is a relatively short act, not like the medical act, but a short act with statutory instruments dealing with the various aspects. So we will have an order or a regulation dealing with fitness to practice, and another one dealing with registration and so on. So I think we're probably going to get the best of both worlds. On the joint care thing, we don't actually provide for that specifically, but it's certainly something that should be thought about. It's certainly something that ought to come under the bargaining council, about whether there should be a specific provision. Happy to draft something if that's what you want.
Now, were these just questions?
Just really tiny
Question, yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Will the advertisement and promotion of fostering as a career be held within the central body? Will we be able to control the message to some sense about what the work is?
I can't say I've turned my mind to that. I would have thought that that's something that both the regulatory council and the bargaining council would think about. It's normal, in the medical profession, it's normal for a trust to advertise that it wants a consultant orthopaedic surgeon, but it's understood that will be on the conditions that have been negotiated between the BMA and the Secretary of State for Health. So, but I mean, there's room for infinite variation, whatever suits really.
I mean, I think the important thing is though that the draft bill in the explanatory notes redefines what the whole area does, the whole sector does. You know, so.
Right, when I read this last night, I had to sneak copy. The largest round of applause was music to my ears was about criminal prosecution for somebody lies when an allegation is put to it. How will you legislate to make it criminal offence, and how will you ensure that the CPS take it seriously so it doesn't just become a damp squid? Because this, I mean, I deal with a lot of allegations around the UK for people at the IWGB, and this is a massive issue. I see it all the time, where it's just complete fabrications. And I sat there and read this like that and went, yes! There's everybody cheers, because that's massive for us. But what worries me is that it will become ineffective like the HCPC or the other organisations where they just worm their way out of it. I mean, this would be brilliant. We'll all be sending you flowers forever.
Well, I mean, clearly that at the end of the day, somebody's got to decide to bring a prosecution. But my experience is, and I've represented doctors in the GMC, is that the fear of lying on oath is a real restraint on people bringing false allegations. Of course, it doesn't stop it, but the fear that the fitness to practice committee will say at the end of the case, and we don't accept the evidence of Mr. Hendy, we think he was lying, and we're going to refer the case to the Crown Prosecution Services. You know, it's a bit daunting when that happens, and it does happen. It does happen.
Right, I'm going to move swiftly on to Sarah Anderson, who's the chair of the England and Wales Foster Care Workers Branch. Over to you, Sarah, please.
Thank you. Massive thank you to John. Thank you, John, Jason, and all of our team. Everybody is involved. This is the first time that I have heard a solution to our problem. I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but that is the first time the IWGB here have brought us a solution to something. Now, most of you who know me know that I had major surgery last Monday, didn't come out to hospital till Saturday, and this is very last minute and put together, but I want to speak to you from my heart. And Jason rang me and was pleased to think that I could come, and I said, what do you want me to say? And he said, well, I want you to tell me, what does it mean for foster carers? I think one of the first things I'd like to say is I'm here, and it's not been easy for me today to get here. I'm shaking, it's been really difficult. But I am here, and that's what it matters to me and to all of you. I heard Sir Martin Neary say, after the alleged independent government report into fostering, and the key message he gave us was, fostering is a success story. It's not. Fostering is like me here today. I look fairly okay. Those who don't know me, well, don't think that I look peaky. I've dressed well, and I have my makeup on, my hair's done. Underneath this, I have a grim pair of Ted socks on that are all ruffled up around my toes, causing me a discomfort. I have a massive scar with stitches and dressings underneath this. I'm full of drugs to keep me pain-free and on the go in my rehabilitation. Now that, I would say, is a strong metaphor for what we are. We are this person that is covered up and saying that we're fine all the time. And we say we're fine because we're too scared to say anything else. People won't say, no, this is rubbish and you need to do something about it. Because they'll say that at 12 o'clock and by 4:30 the kids will be taken away and you'll have an allegation against you to shut you up. So Jason also said to me, give them examples of why we need the body, why we need the rights, why we need the collective bargaining. And I thought, if I give you specific
examples, it always seems to give people an excuse to say, oh, well, there's always that one example, isn't there? There's always that one person that's going to be, you know, an anomaly. They're not. Jane and I work closely together, as we all do, on allegations. I keep my hand in to find out what's going on around the country, and the abuse is incredible. I'd like to think these three things together, the regulatory body, the workers' rights, and the collective bargaining. And don't forget, none of us have been union people before, very few. When I first came to the union, you know, and I saw they had this kind of sign with a sort of, I don't know, clenched fist and something going like that, I was like, oh God, I don't know, Jason, it's a bit commie to me. and I literally just shied away from action and, oh no, we're far too British, and us foster carers, we're very quiet, we don't do anything like that. But over the last 2 years, I have noticed all of you join me in saying, this is what we need to do to be heard. We're not aggressive, we just won't take the same old nonsense that's gone on time after time after time. I'd like to think these three need to work together in synergy. It's like the holy trinity of what we need going forward. The regulatory body, the workers' rights, and the collective bargaining, our holy trinity. That one thing that has not been spoken about is, and before anyone else says that where are the children in this, let's all remember we are the children. We don't shout it from the rooftops, why not? We're doing it every single day. And I tell you what, you will foster despite what's going on, not because of it. And my kids are really precious to me. My husband will confirm that even from my hospital bed, when I quite a state last week, was still on the phone trying to locate a missing young person because we didn't want to move them out of our care while I had my operation, because it was really important to keep the continuity at school and all the rest of it. So we were still doing it throughout that. So we are the actual people who put the children first, and we would never embark on anything that didn't protect our children too. What they don't talk about is, without this Holy Trinity, the three of these things, we are controlled. We are controlled to within an inch of our lives. They hold our lives in their hand like a bird, like that, and just one squeeze like that, and lives are destroyed. And they are destroyed. And children's lives are destroyed by being moved when they shouldn't, by having carers who destitute. I will tell you now, and I can't tell you who or where, in confidence, I had a carer ring me the other day because they are going to the food bank. And was there anything I could do? Okay? It's destroying lives. We are owned. It's like being in the 1800s sort of in the workhouse or something. We're actually owned by these people. They own every aspect of our lives, every intimate detail. Our medical records are banded around the offices, our Form Fs flung anywhere they like. They own us, and they have no accountability with us at all. The reason why this Holy Trinity all needs to work together, the collective bargaining. We have never had a voice, ever, have we? We've tried, people have tried, and good people have tried, but it gets ignored, faux consultations, complete nonsense, run roughshod over. I liken, if we don't have these three things together, I like it to Japanese knotweed. You know, you pull up a bad root, don't you, and you get rid of it, and what happens? 5 seconds later, it's come through the pavings somewhere else, and it's just invading the whole thing. We need this whole thing to work and to go through and to change this industry completely. When you hear about the register, the question is not, can we have one? The question is, why haven't we got one? John really brought that home today, didn't he? Why haven't we got one? When you talk about workers' rights, we only want recognition for what we've got. They say, oh, what about the children? We're already doing it. That ship sailed a long time ago. We're already doing it. Workers' rights, again, the question is not can we have them, why haven't we got them? People say to you, you can go and work for someone else who don't like fostering. Well, why are you doing it? Just move. We don't move. Why? Because of our children. And because those are the sort of people we are, that is the thing that we want to do. And thank goodness for that. Because where would the vulnerable children of this country be without people like you, all of you, wanting to do this job? So, to finish, 2 years ago, in my innocence coming into this as very wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and frankly not having a clue what she was talking about. I still don't know that I do. I heard the Association of Directors of Children's Services inaugural speech by a Director of Children's Services, obviously, who was becoming the president. She said that, and I think she quoted it to somebody else, but she poo-hooed a register, couldn't imagine what the advantages would be. Well, for whom, I don't know. Obviously, the advantage for us are obvious, but not for her. And she said she couldn't see the advantage and what a terrible idea it was to have a skilled, specialised, unionised workforce. Her. And at that point, that became my dream. And I want it to become your dream. I want that dream for my kids. I want that dream for myself. Most importantly, I want it for you. Thank
I'm just wondering, John, as well, that we were both in a meeting together last Wednesday, and John was doing a presentation to some members of Parliament about the construction of a Labour law manifesto for a future Labour government, and workers' rights of this nature were intrinsically built within that. I just want to say a minute or two about that, John.
Yeah, well, the proposal is a borrowed from the proposal for you guys, I have to say. I mean, the proposal is that there should be a single status for all workers in the country, not this silly division into employee, LIMBY worker, self-employed, not in business on their own account, self-employed, in business on their own account. Single worker status, with the only exception being those people who are genuinely in business on their own account, who are free to employ people themselves and take all the risk of a business. Everybody else should be a worker. All employment rights should follow from day one of the employment. That's the first and main proposal. The first proposal we're putting forward. The second is the reintroduction of sectoral collective bargaining. So along the lines of the structure that we're suggesting for foster carers, but now rolled out to all sectors of the economy. I mean, it can take many years to do it, but bit by bit. So there are some obvious sectors that need collective bargaining. For example, agricultural workers, where the Agricultural Wages Board was abolished in October 2013. We propose that should come back, that sector, so that there are minimum terms and conditions, not just an hourly rate like the national minimum wage, but all the terms and conditions that go with it. The special rate for night work, waiting time, travelling time, and under the old Agricultural Wages Board there used to be a special rate for dogs. A special dog allowance for shepherds and so forth. So all these sorts of aspects have got to be regulated. Another area you can immediately think of that could do with sectoral collective bargaining immediately, fast food delivery or social care, both in residential homes or the social carers that go to people's homes and take the elderly, get them up in the morning, wash them, dress them, give them breakfast, etc., etc. But we think that this model applies across, should apply across practically the whole of work in Britain. 32.4 million workers we've got in this country, and the coverage of collective bargaining at the moment is about 22%. It's pitiful. Whereas in the rest of Europe, you've got countries like France or Austria where collective bargaining coverage is 98%. And indeed, in 1979 we had 82% coverage in this country. What's happened over the last 4 years is that collective bargaining has been destroyed, and that with it, workers' voice. Now you go for a job, and you're told either you take the job on the terms and conditions offered, or you can walk down the road. It's as simple as that. There is no negotiation at all. So that's the second major proposal. Also proposing the reintroduction of a Ministry of Labour, which is very important, so that workers have a voice at the cabinet table, so that the economy can be planned, so that we don't have these issues of skills shortages or skills surpluses and so on. What else? A national labour inspectorate, so that labour inspectors can come both for health and safety at work, ensure that minimum wage is being paid, ensure that the collective agreement is being honoured, and to intervene when people with a protected characteristic, as the lawyers call it, might be being dismissed. That's a good example would be pregnant women. When a pregnant woman is dismissed, the proposal is that the labour, she cannot be dismissed without the say-so of a labour inspector, who's going to say, well, this appears to be genuinely because she's useless or whatever it is, and not by reason of pregnancy. There are too many for such dismissal. Anyway, I get carried away from the detail. We've tried to do, and this is a very comprehensive act of Parliament indeed, what we're proposing here in the Industrial Relations Bill, to put right so many of the things that are wrong with the law at work today. My colleagues in the Institute of Employment Rights and I have been working on this now since 2013, effectively. It's a massive piece of work, but hopefully it'll come to pass.
All right, John. There's a good sign here, right, that the witching hour of 1:30 has passed and nobody's entered the room, so we've still got the room until somebody comes in. So if people want to carry on, right?
Really pleased to see the focus on staffing and manning the regulatory body, legislative body, appropriately, because once we've achieved that, we must not allow it to be taken over by people and organisations who, whilst claiming to act in the interests of foster care workers, actually being putting the interests of others first. Organisations such as Foster Talk and Fostering Network, and just to illustrate that point a bit further, the Fostering Network are in the pay of the local authorities and the IFAs, whose interests are best served by foster care workers remaining cheap and disposable, whereas it's in foster care workers' interest for us to be fairly and properly paid and with all the rights and protections other workers already have. Despite the Fostering Network campaigning and putting that in inverted commas for years to improve the lot of foster care workers, we have remained in a sorry state without any rights or protections whatsoever. And I know that I'm not the only foster care worker who has felt profound disappointment when turning to the Fostering Network for help and support. There are many, many other foster care workers who have felt the same. The reason being that the Fostering Network serves the interests of their local authority and IFA paymasters first and foremost, especially when their interests conflict with ours. So when it comes to our own legislative regulatory body, we will cease to be treated as second class and of lesser importance. And this means that all of those who've been responsible for treating us as such must not be involved. We are going to be entering a new era in which foster care workers are going to be treated with the importance, respect, justice and fairness that we all deserve and that's long overdue to us. And very careful selection of who is to be involved with this is absolutely vital.
It just strikes me that there's a massive difference between monitoring and paying lip service to complaining about an injustice than actively campaigning against it. And I think that's what the ball game that we're probably in there.
There's a particular aspect of both Foster Talk and Foster Network. Their hook to get membership is that they provide insurance for foster carers. But social workers don't require that insurance, and the reason is that the House of Lords ruled that they don't hold liability. Why hasn't the same thing happened with foster carers?
What needs to happen next to move this forward?
Jason. Well, look, I mean, you know, the thing is, well, getting a draft bill together is an important step, and you know, getting the sort of the architecture ready for a draft bill to be properly constructed is one step. Now, the thing is, there are a number of different devices. You know, a 10-minute rule bill, a private member's bill, or getting it part of a manifesto commitment for a future government, which is the best route. That you know, if you can get it as a manifesto commitment for a future government, you've got much more chance of having it passed into legislation than by all that parliament. I mean, you know, we are in a situation where 20 people who are MPs get their name drawn out of a ballot to put forward a private member's bill in every parliamentary session. The current parliamentary session is a 2-year session, so you would have thought more private members' bills would have been passed, but only 2, I think, have been given consent. Some have even been given second reading, which means, you know, it's on the way to being consented to. But unfortunately, the one big problem with private members' bills is you can get a view of Parliament that says we would like this passed into legislation, but if the government then subsequently don't bring what's called a money bill back, in other words, how it's going to be paid for, it just sits there. So this needs to be in a party manifesto to be passed into legislation by an incoming government.
Very like us down dog carers, we had a foster carers coffee morning, we were calling it brunch now the other week, and in the room, £50,000 owed.
Yeah.
They were only 12 of us then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can speak for my local authority. At present, my format, which I had to go through a second time, I transferred it to 11 months, is open. Anyone can read about medical, non-financial. Got the night shift worker, who I don't even know has access. All this be tied up to relevant information. Will we know what's allowed? Some of the thought that's under GDPR, is that not breach of confidentiality now? At present, my whole file is open. Anyone can do that shit.
We're on that, Alison.
I'm going to bring Jason in because we do need to wrap it now.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Ian said about next steps. So hopefully by the end of this APPG, and we're planning on ending, depending on the parliamentary session, planning on wrapping the whole thing up by around summertime. Ideally, a majority of members of this APPG will endorse something similar to what we've put together. And I think that one positive note to strike here, you know, we obviously, of course, we have to be realistic about how long it takes to get legislation passed and the hurdles and whatnot. But I do think the core of what we're proposing is something that can achieve support on a broad political consensus. And we've seen, just as the membership of this APPG shows, where we have at least one person from every political party except one in Westminster who's participating in some capacity in this APPG. So I think the idea is we'll want to get the different parties supporting this. I know Labour has informally indicated quite a bit of support. You might remember it was John McDonnell's idea that we set up this APPG. And I'm sure Ian's going to take this back and lobby the party to stamp of approval right on it. But also we've been having meetings with MSPs in Scotland because the fostering regulations being devolved, some aspects of this, in particular the Central Register, might need to be set up by the Scottish Parliament. And we've met with members of every political party in the Scottish Parliament, and many of them have indicated informal support for something like this. So in September, we're going to host an event in the Scottish Parliament specifically on the Central Register and the regulatory body in Scotland. And co-hosting the event will be Willie Rennie, who's the leader of the Scottish Lib Dems, Patrick Harvey, who's the leader of the Scottish Greens, Ian, from the Conservative Party, who was designated by Ruth Davidson, and Ian Gray, who's former leader of the Scottish Labour Party. So that's quite a broad political spectrum, and they've all indicated informally support. So it won't be easy, but I do think it is achievable.
I mean, and I think that is important, by the way. I mean, I think actually getting a similar bill passed in one of the delegated assemblies, like Wales, Northern Ireland, that's going to happen many times soon, or Scotland, could actually be a big lever to